coming up on the official Celtic FC podcast. I chat with former It Bites frontman and huge Celtic fan Francis Dunnery about his passion for the hoops and his musical journey that took him from a small village in Cumbria to touring with some of the biggest names in the industry. All this, plus a live exclusive performance, coming right up. Welcome to the official Celtic FC podcast. My name's Gerry, McCulloch. I'm really excited today because I'm going to be interviewing not just a Celtic fan, but a guy who I have followed for a number of years. I think he's one of the best singer-songwriters out there. Former lead singer of It Bites. Francis Dunnery is the man I'm talking about, and he is joining us from Connecticut. Francis, fantastic to see you. You're looking well. First of all, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I can't tell you how excited I am to do this. This is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
Francis, you've toured the world with Robert Plant. How can this possibly be the most exciting thing you've ever done?
I'm Celtic daft, man. Absolutely.
So we'll get into the music as well, because obviously I want to talk to you about the music, but we're here to talk about Celtic as well. You grew up in Egremont in Cumbria. Tell us where the Celtic thing came from. Was it? I mean, I was looking into that region. In fact, Joe Sullivan, who works in the Celtic View and has done for decades, he said to me, "There's a really big Irish contingent round there. Of course, Cleatormoor is just up the road from Egremont. There's the
they call it Little Island.
Little Island, yeah. And they've got a Cleatormoor Celtic FC football club or something.
Celtic is legendary, dude. They play the strike, play the hoops.
Exactly. So is that where it all came about, or was it somewhere else?
Well, my dad's from New Stevenson. So you know, I grew up
North Lanarkshire.
My dad was Celtic crazy, and see, it's hard for you guys born up there in Glasgow to understand what happens when you have a parent who's a Celtic fan or who's Scottish even. You can't get it out of your system because they put it into your system when it was Feyenoord, the Feyenoord final. What year was that?
What, the European Cup? What, the European Cup final? Oh, that was 1970.
So, all right. So I was 8 years old, and I remember this is the first recollection I ever saw. My dad's always been telling me about Jimmy Johnson and Celtic, and then he used to take me to the games at Parkhead, and I would sit there and I was like, you know, these guys like Billy McNeil and like all these guys. And I remember they got beat, and all my dad's friends were around in the house, and they were all having a drink and all that, and the game was on, and they got beat. And I said, "But they're gonna come back though, Dad, right?" And he went, "No, son, that's it." And I was like, "Oh, I'll never forget that. That was the most devastating time because my dad was so sad. It was dreadful, Gerry. Honestly, you've no idea. I've never got it out of my system since. And so I was brainwashed with Celtic from an early age. Everything was green and white. I used to watch every day when the football results come on. World of Sport, we'd just wait for that. You know, East 5-6, Stenhouse 3, and then we'd wait for the Celtic. So it goes back to then, and so when you have a Scottish parent, no matter who, it doesn't matter, you know, who they're supporting. Like you just grow up with, it just gets in you and you can't get rid of it. That's it. And so I was Celtic obsessed, as my kids are now, you know, from day one.
And you're right, but you're right when you say it gets in you because, you know, you left Egremont, you know, as a young man. You went to London, you then went to America, you lived in LA, you've lived in New York, you now live in Connecticut. But despite all of the great things that you've done in the music industry and the fact you've been away from Scotland, it's still in you and you've put it in your kids.
It's a very weird weekend when I don't wake up on Saturday or Sunday and the game's on. Yeah, and my house has got that, so we get the breakfast on, the first thing, Celtic game on, because they often come on at 7 o'clock over here, at 7:30. And you know, I go back a long way with Celtic TV. I used to log in with old Jim. You know, when Jim was on there, and he was. I used to send messages into him, Jim. You know, like
Jim Craig. We're talking about.
Yeah. Oh no, we loved Jim. Jim was great. And then, but every Saturday morning, it's part of the Dunnery household. It's like it has to happen. Like the game goes on, just that noise and that Scottish accent comes through, and the Celtic TV and. You know, it started. I went away from it for quite a bit. I was always a Celtic supporter, of course, but in terms of how I am now, it was after my dad died. That's when I really, because that's when you look when something like that happens, when a parent dies or something, you look for ways to connect with them. Unconsciously, you don't realise what you're doing. But that was Celtic Football Club is way more than a football club to me. It's my dad. It's my dad. It's like it makes me want to weep sometimes when I go up there because I go to the games and all that. I go with Paul Riley, actually. Winston from Still Game.
All right, yeah.
Paul's a big mate of mine. He was a It Bites fan as well, so I know Paul really well. So we go to the Celtic games together when I go up. And if he's paying, I go in the posh end and I get dinner and all that. But if it's me, I just get him a cheap ticket at the back.
So have you had the chance to bring your kids to Celtic Park yet?
They've never been yet, but they've only been to Cumbria once, so I didn't manage to get up. There was no games on. I was going to bring them to see some games over here. There was a couple, I think there was one in Ohio, but by the time you figured it out, it ends up being like $400 just to, it's just too much cash to go and see them. But I did take my daughter Ava. She's 23 now. She won't be able to get it out of her system either. But I took her to see them beat Man United 2-1 about 10 years ago or something. So, it was all good stuff.
Fantastic. So you said you come here with Paul Riley. I know you're over here gigging now and again. When was the last time you were here?
I haven't been for a while now. I've kind of took it off. I've took off music for a while because when I did like about 150 shows a year for like 25 years, and I never saw my kids. I never saw my family. I didn't know who I was anymore. I just go to another hotel room and I was doing a great thing because I did it. I literally invented house concerts. I was the first guy to do it. And I've got a book on it, House Concert Expert. I just woke up one day and I thought, because the rock and roll thing, man, it gets to you after a while. I just get bored. And so I've done things like I had a horse farm in Vermont for about 6 years. That was fun, like training horses. I do things like that. That's what I'm looking to do now. So with music, I have this not love and hate relationship with it. I just get uncreative and I feel like I'm not, I'm just not really I'm just not doing it. I don't feel like worthy of doing music because I've got nothing to say. And so I need to go out and get devastated either with like a new girlfriend or something like that. And then I come back and I've got all these songs,
So, I mean, take me back, if you don't mind, let's get into the music for a little bit and then we can come back to Celtic as well. Yeah. I got into your music, I'll tell you, because a friend of mine, it must have been in the mid-90s, you had just started the Fearless tour. I think that was the Fearless. I think it just come out.
Fearless,
I think I'm right in saying that was was that your second solo album or your first?
Yeah, the first one was a bit of a disaster because I was drunk when I did it. So it was on. I listened back to the first one I did. I mean, there's some half decent songs on it, but I did it terrible. But I actually I re-recorded it about 10 years ago. It's fantastic. The new version of the first album, but the first one was a bit rough. But Fearless was a good record.
So Welcome to the Wild Country was the first one. Is that right?
Yeah, but I'm going to send you it. Return to the Wild Country. That's what you need to be listening to.
Right. Okay. So to get back onto the story, how I got into your music, it was a friend of mine who recommended I listen to a live album from this guy. Now I knew about It Bites from the 80s, and we all knew Calling All the Heroes because it was such a big hit. But I wasn't so much into that kind of progressive rock back then as you were, obviously. But he said, the lead singer of It Bites, he's called Francis Dunnery. He did this live album from King Tut's in Glasgow. Now, you called it...
One Night in Sauchiehall Street.
One Night in Sauchiehall Street, even though King Tut's is actually on Bath Street, I think. But anyway...
Yeah, it just sounded better. It sounded better.
It did. So, and I listened to it. He said, you need to listen to it. He was a musician as well. And he knew the kind of music I liked. And as soon as I heard that guitar riff on Homegrown, I thought, oh, this is my kind of music. And I was hooked on your music from then for a good few years. Then I kind of went off it and back onto it. I didn't go off it for any particular reason. Just went on to other just went on to other stuff and then came back onto it. But how does that person from Egremont, which is kind of as small a town as you could perhaps possibly have these big dreams of becoming a big rock and roll star?
It's really interesting that you say that because I do a lot of things in my life. I have a very diverse career. I don't just do music. I also do public speaking. I've also studied. I'm well studied in Jungian psychology. So I do. There's a whole bunch of stuff I do that you probably don't even want to know right now. But one of the things I talk about is that when a bee goes chasing pollen, nobody tells the bee what to do. Like they don't have like bee meetings, right, this week we're going to go to that flower. The bee just comes out because it's inherent identity of who it is. It knows what it is. So we have the same thing in us. Like we just unconsciously drift towards what we really are. And sometimes we end up in jobs that go, so there's like the ego world, the social world, and then there's like your real identity. And sometimes they conflict and sometimes they're at harmony with each other. And so I just never had, people could say, because I did achieve quite a lot of stuff in music from where I'm from, but I didn't have like a plan. I'm not that smart, you know what I mean? I'm not like, well, now I'm going to plot this. I just I followed the breezes. I just got blown around like a piece of, in the wind, and I just landed on this and I landed on that. And I landed on this. I was always quite a very nervous kid, Oftentimes when you get people with a loud personality, like I sometimes have in public, it's usually shyness or fear. You know what I mean? So I'm very painfully shy. Like if you want, I've built great defense systems. I've got great ones. I can even knock people out. I can do all that stuff. But really, like the truth is, I'm painfully shy, and so that's how I ended up doing that. It was almost like I was daring myself to go on stage. I'm not very comfortable on stage, even though I look it. I'm not. I'm kind of like, because there's them people in music who can't wait to get on the play. I'm not like that.
It's funny, I was having a conversation with someone the other day about exactly that, and they were talking about, because I was kind of hosting this event, and they saw that as being kind of evidence as how confident you must be. Right. And I was trying to explain to them that sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes that when you put yourself in a position, and I mentioned kind of, out there rock stars, take someone like Prince, for instance, probably the most kind of out there showman that you could possibly get, but painfully shy. And
yes, he was.
They see the stage as a way of keeping people away from them. It's almost like
that's exactly it. That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
There's an invisible barrier in front of them, which means no one can get to them, which means that they can perform, but they can perform in a safe environment because they're actually shy. Is that what you're like?
You're absolutely right, and that's it. So anybody with a loud, even out in the world, it doesn't matter who they are. The louder they are, the more fearful they are. And Mike Tyson, who I have a very interesting history with, because I go back way back with Mike in his amateur days, and he said fear is who I am. He said every single thing about my system is just everything is fear. There's nothing other than fear. That's what he said. You think, oh, Mike's this, and that's why he does what he does, because he's that frightened. He has to, he has to be that. It's like to keep people off, like you said, exactly like you said, to keep people off. And so I didn't, I know it's a long version of the answer, but in reality, I didn't have any plan. I'm not smart enough to figure something else like that. I mean, how do you figure out, right, I'm going to be the lead guitar player for Robert Plant? And back then when I had the job, I played with Robert from 90 to 93, I think, 94. That was the biggest job in the world. And I don't mean that in a brag out way. I just mean because I didn't have any plan for it. I didn't even want the job. I had my own record deal. But I'd known Robert because It Bites supported Robert a few years before. And like Robert says in his book, he said that I was the only guitar player that really ever excited him, which is a massive compliment to me. I mean, that's like, that's so. I think Chris Hughes, the producer, called me the young hotshot. I'm no longer that now, believe me. Young hotshot, Francis Dunnery, and so he asked for me to come and do it. I didn't because there was guys auditioning for that job, probably like 1,000 of them. I didn't know any Jimmy Page stuff. I was a Genesis fan. I didn't grow up listening to Led Zeppelin. You know what I mean? I didn't know. I mean, I knew like Whole Lot of Love or a few. Physical Graffiti. I had that record. That was a good record, but I didn't want the job, but it blew me there. So I just think that your unconscious is at work all the time. You've got your brain that you're thinking with, and then you've got this essence of who you are, and it's that brings your life to you. That's the magnet of your life. You stick to things that you unconsciously are after, and that includes pain. It also includes the good stuff. So I think I was probably open to doing that unconsciously. Because if you had asked my brain would have said, no, I've got my own record deal, and there's some ego nonsense that I'm full of that. You know?
How much did you try and get, all the people that you met in the music industry, did you try and turn them into Celtic supporters? The likes of Robert Plant. He's a Wolves fan, isn't he?
Robert's Wolves, yeah. In fact, there was a good story with Robert because when he come and did our charity, I got into Egremont. He come and did our charity at Egremont, and I got him to play Led Zeppelin songs that he swore he'd never play. So, because me and Robert, I love Robert. I love him like he's genius, dude. Honestly, he's the funniest, most intelligent bloke you've ever met in your life. He's hysterically funny, like brilliant funny. And so, but he's the joke. So when he come up, I called one of my friends down in Wolverhampton who was coming up to the charity event. I said, listen, here's 400 quid. Go and buy Robert every single thing that is to do with Wolves in the thing. And so he got, so there's like cups, scarves, tops, socks. But I didn't realize he owned the club.
He could get this stuff anyway.
I'll give him it anyway. But I didn't realize. He went, oh, don't be silly, Frankie. I own the place.
But he did your turn anyway.
Yeah, so Robert, that was... what did you ask me? I can't remember what you asked me now, Jerry.
I was asking about, meeting famous people, trying to turn them into Celtic fans. How much was Celtic still a part of your conversation?
Oh, always. Dude, you don't understand how obsessed I am with football. You don't understand. Like, you think I'm like a football... No, dude, I'm telling you. I would watch every game. Like, I'll tend to follow managers, so I'll watch Tottenham now.
Okay.
And I would always watch them before, but now I'll actually be interested in them. Poor old Angie's having a bad time. Oh, we'll get into that in a minute. I'll watch anything. I'll just anything. Like, there's a few clubs that I'm not really, like, I don't care about Southampton. I don't care about, like, Brecon City. I don't, but if you put like an Aberdeen game, I'll watch an Aberdeen game. I'll watch Aberdeen against Kilmarnock or Rangers. I watch Rangers every weekend. Hopefully they get beat. I think I always watch them. In fact, I'll say to Liz, my girlfriend, if they draw something like that, then that's made my day now. The Rangers have got beat.
So I'll just timestamp this for everyone. We are talking on Wednesday, the 18th of December. So just a few days ago, it was the League Cup final. How were I was there, obviously, at Hampden commentating for Celtic TV. How were your nerves watching that game?
Dude, I was, honest to God, I wasn't doing good at all. I get like real sad because I think it's my dad. It's also it feels like, even though intellectually I know it isn't, it feels like somebody's beating my dad. Like, that's the problem I've got, and I can't shake that off. It's my dad. It's not like a football team. It's like, it's like, dude, it's seriously personal. And so when they went 1-0 up, I'm just like, and then like they went 1-1, I'm like, because I'm like, and then 2-1, I'm like, and then 2-2, I'm going up and down all the time. 3-2, I'm like, towards the end, and then they lost another goal, and then the penalty shootout, and I'm just. But the thing is when you go through those, it's terror. That's all I can say about it. It's like when you go through that terror, when you win, it's like, dude, it's like. So because that was an emotional game.
Well, being a Celtic supporter through the 80s and particularly the 90s, then, in fact, you have witnessed some of the bad times in our history when trophies. I mean, I was on with Peter Grant at the weekend, and I didn't realise this until we were chatting before the game, that he had never won the League Cup as a Celtic player. I think I'm right in saying Celtic didn't win the League Cup between, I think it was 82 and 97, which nowadays the young Celtic supporters is unheard of.
Yeah. See, now my kids have never seen them get beat until a few years ago with Steven Gerrard. Because I've got two young'uns as well. I've got a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they're Celtic nuts. In fact, I'll send you a picture of my son's bedroom. You won't believe it, dude, I'm telling you. And so, but they couldn't. They're like, what do you mean? They didn't understand because they went through the whole Scott Brown years. Mm-hmm. And Scott and Lee Griffiths had actually done the videos because Paul Riley went into their. I said, Riley, go and get my kids some personal messages from some of them players in there. So he got Scott Brown and he got Lee Griffiths and like, all right, Frankie, all right, I'll say they're doing all. And my kids are like, but they grew up in that time where they just didn't get beat.
So you mentioned you get to. Yeah, you mentioned the two young kids then. Do they ever kind of dive into the It Bites rabbit hole on YouTube and see their dad with the long blonde hair?
Sometimes that they'll have a look. Something will come, or somebody's mother will say something to them. Say like where they live in Connecticut. So because I had quite a few good. I had a good go of it in Connecticut too. So some people, I don't really do the press stuff. I'm not really one of them type of guys. I just can't be. I'm just not into that. But if people heard me on the radio, they know who I am, obviously, right? So they'll go Dunnery because it's such an unusual name. It comes from Ireland. It comes from round about Killashandra in the County Cavan, and it means the King's Court. And it's Dunnery. You'll see signs for it on the posts. Dunnery. That's where our family comes from. But right. It is an unusual name. There's a lot of Duns and stuff like that, but Dunnery's quite unusual. There was a night and day Dunnery who emigrated to Australia because he worked night and day. That must be me. That's just anyway. So they'd said to my kids. So my kids sometimes look and they'll go. My son will say, "Daddy, you're a rock star," and I'll go, "No, I'm not." And they'll go, "Well, who's the, And so they've been on there looking. But I told them about this podcast. That's the most impressive thing that I've done so far in their eyes.
Excellent. At what stage then? So we're talking, back in the 80s, at the peak of It Bites. What was there a particular moment or a particular incident where you thought there, and the kind of bravado of your kind of mid-20s, you thought, this is it, I've done it, I've made it?
I don't actually, Gerry, without no lying, I don't even think in those terms. I'm as comfortable doing carpentry with my brother as I am. I don't really feel like I don't have any thoughts to put myself out there. I just don't have it. I mean, I ended up. That's what happened, but that's not really what I'm doing. Like I'm much more comfortable lecturing or teaching. I love teaching. I love teaching like psychology and astrology or doing public speaking. So I love that. Like I would be very but the concept of somebody clapping me or applauding me and giving me applause, it isn't. It's just, and I don't think it's bad for people who do. It just doesn't really. That's just not what I'm doing here. So I don't really think that. When I was at the top of probably the height of my public, success, because I've had a lot of successes in personal terms other than that, and I don't mean in the world, I just mean within myself. But what people would normally consider to be success was probably, doing like the MTV Awards and all that in Australia, and like, with Robert, I had my own record deal, and like round about that, between like 95 and 2000. That was a very worldly successful time for me, but it wasn't really something I was, going after. It's not what makes me happy. So I tend to go with what makes me happy.
Yeah, and when It Bites broke up, then, and you then became a solo artist, you moved over to LA. Was there this conflict between what really inside you really wanted to do and what you felt you kind of should do in terms of becoming a solo artist in this big music industry?
I didn't really know myself back then, so I can't really tell you. I think I was running on pure ego. So it's all ego then, you're like building this, this false identity, like you think I just saw Jim Carrey go through, the comedian. Mm-hmm. He just went through that whole jokey thing that he does. He's very serious now because he realizes that jokey thing was out of fear and it's not who he is and he doesn't want to do it anymore. So around about that time, if It Bites and all the rest of it, it wasn't like I was like a horrible person or anything like that. It's just that like I didn't know who I was, authentically who I was. And so I don't really know what I was doing, to be honest. I think I was just lost. I think, like most people around about that age between, I don't know, like looking for your identity between like 20 and 30 or something like that. I think you get lost. We all have a psychological death at 35. It's what they call the midlife crisis or the middle passage. They call it, and it's when who you think you are gets killed by who you really are. And so after 35, sometimes it's a divorce, sometimes the death of a parent, an illness, and you get fired from your job or whatever it is. But that moment, that 35, from 35 to 60 actually, so it's anywhere in there, and you literally get killed. Like you get that person you've been gets taken out, and then you come back in more authentically, like more with who you are. And in fact, when you get into Jungian psychology, and I'm not trying to do any religious thing here, so don't think I am, but Jungian psychology, symbolically, they say that's what the crucifixion was about. They say that the crown of thorns represented the ego, the pains of the ego, and we got crucified on a cross of matter, and then he came back in authenticity. That process of what the flowers do and the plants, where the tree shakes its leaves and then it grows again, new growth happens. That happens to us at 35. So I think I can only really talk consciously with you from like 35, I think, because my dad died and all that stuff when I went through that. I'm sorry to go so a bit deep into it there, but sorry.
No, it's fine. Listen, I knew this conversation might go off on little tangents because I know you're interested in many different things. But when you speak about your dad instilling the Celtic thing in you, was it also family influences that put the music thing in you as well?
Well, my brother was a great guitar player, but he wasn't very ambitious either, but he was a great guitar player. And so there was always music in my house, I guess. See, my house was like a form of paradise, because when I grew up, all my friends' bandmates would be there, and they all had like them 70s haircuts and the 70s thing, and there was guitar and roadies, and my sister had all her friends. And my mum and dad had that whole they used to call it the Cafe Dunnery, because everybody would come to our house. Then my mum would feed everybody. It was a typical kind of like Catholic upbringing I had. I was, went to Catholic school, and we did the nuns and the priests and all that. And the whole, I find that, the thing, they taught us at the school, at the Catholic schools, was that to give. And St. Francis, who is my namesake, he said it's in giving that we're given. So he said, if you don't feel good in life, it's because you're not giving enough. You need to give of yourself or give of somebody else. And my mum and dad were the most generous people I've ever known in my life. They gave everything. And that's why when I did my charity, it's called the Charlie and Kathleen Dunnery Children's Fund. And the logo is a little guy in the Celtic shirt. I'll send you a link for that. And I wanted them to keep giving. And so I'll tell you about that in a minute. But that kind of upbringing that I had of generosity and giving and helping others and stuff like that, it was not so much music, it was more that came out of my family. But my sister's incredibly generous. My brother, it's like we grew up in that. We were taught to give, like share what you've got. Like if you've got to share it with everybody. We were taught that, heavily taught that, not just in the house, but also in Catholic school and in the church. I mean, I'm not traditionally religious like that, but because I got into the church thing more from the Jungian symbolism, which is way more fascinating. I don't want to mess anybody up here, but it's fascinating when you look at it from that perspective. It's like, it's like, wow. Sorry, Gerry, I've got off again.
No, it's fine. So, but in terms of the music, it was more your brother that was the influence there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because I like in my early home, there was like Yes albums lying around, and like my Vishnu Orchestra and Soft Machine. It was like very muso stuff. But I love pop music. I was always a big pop fan. I loved, like songs like Seasons in the Sun, like all the melodic songs. Goodbye, Michelle, it's hard to die. And Paul McCartney. You think that people would have had enough of silly love song? All the 10cc,
Yeah.
I loved all that. And he later on, bands like Prefab Sprout, or one of the greatest bands Scotland ever had was Blue Nile.
Amazing.
Celtic fan, I think, as well, isn't he? Or is he Hibs fan?
Oh, great band. Great band.
I think they're Celtic fans, them guys. I think they are. I know Fish from Marillion, he's a Hibs fan, isn't he, old Fish?
Fish is a Hibby. Yeah, I know that.
I sent him an email when we booked them one day, and he's never talked to me ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it. When they say there's no other club like Celtic, like there actually isn't. It's just because there just isn't. I don't even know why. There's just something about that thing, man. It gets under your skin, and you just can't get it off.
So
one of the lyrics. What? Sorry.
No, carry on, Frank.
One of the lyrics in the song that I'm going to play for you guys later. I'm going to send you. I'll do a performance for everybody. I want to dedicate it to all Celtic fans too, and not just them, but I want to dedicate it to their dads. Like any dads out there, because that's where the message gets passed. But there's a line in the song that says, "Hallelujah, Celtic just beat." No, it says, "I thought I'd lost all them green and white stripes from my mind," and and they're just there all the time. They're always there. Doesn't matter what it is. And it's, and it sounds like an insane thing. It sounds like I'm absolutely insane, but that's how it is for me. Like, even if I'm driving down, I see, sometimes I watch Sporting. Is it Sporting Lisbon? What's that side with the green and white stripes?
There's a side. Sporting Lisbon.
And I just automatically feel closer to them as well. That's like,
just
it's like,
colours.
Yeah, I can't help it. It's just that green and white stripe hoop thing is just, it's just a weird flag. It's a flag. And I know what the people are like. As soon as I see somebody in them, I know them. I know exactly what they're like. As soon as, like, when I go to Scotland and Battlelands, I'm walking around. Because sometimes I took my girlfriend, Liz, she's like American. And I took her and I said, come on, we'll go down to Battlelands. You get them Celtic pubs in the Battlelands. It's just like, dude, you go in, it's like old 60s style. I remember my dad used to take me to the pubs up there in Glasgow. And that's what they were like. There were pubs like that. That's like a throwback there. And it was amazing. Like, just that. But I know I know where they're from. Like, some people might be nervous in there or think like, I know who they are. That's absolutely isn't nervous to me.
It's funny if you can be a shy person and you can be difficult and awkward in social situations, but if you meet someone for the first time and you find out they're a Celtic supporter, so many barriers just disappear, don't they?
Totally get it. No, totally. I'm glad it's not just me that thinks all this, because sometimes I think I'm going nuts. But like,
Let me get back on the music, if you don't mind, as well, because I'm interested in your songwriting process. As I said, I got into your music when you became a solo artist, Fearless. But the one that really got me that I loved was the Gully Flats boys. Gully Flats was the area that you grew up in Edinburgh. I'm a keyboard player, I'm a piano player, so I loved the guitar and Dave Sanchez piano on that album. I just thought it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. How do you sit down and write songs? Are you quite methodical in the sense that, when you were writing your music, it's like, right, today I'm going to write a song? Or are you very much along the lines of, you just go on with your daily life and then all of a sudden something comes to you and you think, I need to write this down?
It goes in batches for me. I tend to like live a bit of life and I've got nothing. I've got no urge to do it. And then all of a sudden it just goes bang. I've got like 30 songs and they just fly out. And while they're flying out, I've got to get them down. So I put them on my phone or I put them anywhere, and I'll craft a basic shape of them, and then I'll go in and I'll kind of what's the word where you kind of make them make sense, because they tend to be emotional messages. Most of my songs, like if you listen to things like Through My Father's Eyes or Heartache Reborn and songs like that, it's an emotional statement I'm making. The lyrics are important, but it's the feeling behind the songs that's what interests me. There's a yearning. It might come all the way back from Ireland. I don't know. It might be just in that DNA. But there's a yearning about it. I know the Blue Nile have got that. I know they've definitely got that. And so is Paddy McAloon from Prefab Sprout. I mean, I do take care of the lyrics, of course, but it tends to be, they're just emotional downloads where it's like, I get, it's like, I don't really have a choice. Like some people are like really clever and all that. I'm not like that. Mine just go, it's like, and that's it. I'm not, they just come out. That's the best way I could probably answer that question. I don't know how else to answer it.
Chris Martin from Coldplay talks about this. He says he tends to kind of sit down and concentrate around about 11 o'clock at night, because he seems to think that's the kind of time where these things come to him.
He's a great songwriter. He's an amazing songwriter.
Yeah. So it's almost like you're just the vessel. You're just the conduit for.
Absolutely.
Is that the same nowadays? The way the music industry is, and the way people just churn out song after song after song.
Not at all. It's all gone now. That like you have to we're like in many ways we're like us kind of old Smiths, old school songwriters like that. We're kind of like horse people when the car's just been invented. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of use for us anymore like that now for the collective. The collective has other ways of doing it. Like, it's the ego machine, which is what the internet basically is. It's an AI and stuff like that. It has its own advantages because it's all about convenience. It's very convenient. But in terms of the humans have got to get lost in it. They'll get lost for about the next 15 years, 15, 20 years, and then they'll come back. This is my astrological stuff going on now. But I predicted the revolution. I predicted that in 1996. I said there'll be a revolution in 2023. We're here. That was Pluto going into Aquarius. I mean, I know everybody thinks this is nuts, but they think I'm nuts anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I'm predicting in like around about 2030 something. I don't know what the exact date is. That the AI thing the humans will start to return because we'll realize that we've just come too far when Pluto goes into Pisces.
Let me take you back because you were a big Genesis fan. You mentioned that back in the day. Am I right in saying that you actually got an opportunity to perhaps become the lead singer of Genesis?
Yeah, I auditioned for them, but I couldn't sing the Phil Collins song. I just couldn't sing it because I'm an old Genesis fan. Like so, right now I've just re-recorded. My friend Dave re-recorded "The Lamb Lies Down" on Broadway, and it's about to come out with an orchestra. And he chose me to sing it, so I've sang the whole thing because I can do it with my eyes shut. I can sing that better than my own song. But so I go down to Genesis, and I actually knew I wasn't going to get the job. There was no chance.
So is this when Phil Collins had left Genesis?
Phil Collins had left Genesis just before they did that album, Calling All Stations or something, which I didn't like that album anyway. But I didn't care. I just, I can't not do that. You know what I mean? Like there's no, it was so surreal. I'm standing in the Genesis studio, and they're weird people, man. They're like that uptight, upper class, like English. It's all very, it's very awkward. Like they're awkward, the most awkward bunch of people I've ever met. There's no kind of, they're just awkward. They're really awkward, dude. And pent up. They're all pent up. And so I'm in there, and I wasn't going to let anything stop it for me. So I just go in there and I sang like some of the old songs, like In the Cage, and I sang, the musical box and stuff, and I did them great. And then they wanted me to sing songs like Mama and stuff. That's not my thing. And so, but I didn't, I was never going to get the job. And I'm too much of an antagonist for Tony Banks, the keyboard player. He actually needs somebody to fight against in order to do good stuff. He always had Peter Gabriel. Peter used to fight with him all the time. And he's an Aries, Tony, so he needs something to go up against. And when he's just left to his own devices, like his solo albums and stuff, they're not very good. But when you fight with him, he comes out with the best stuff, And I would have been fighting with him all the time. You know what I mean? Which would be good for the record, but and also having a northern, Jack the Lad guy in there who doesn't, that's a tough call for Tony, I think.
So it all worked out well in the end.
Yeah, no, I love them. I don't care what people say you shouldn't go and see them. Phil Collins is terrible. Dude, I forgive everything they do. They gave me so much happiness in my life. God bless them. I don't care if they make the worst albums that was ever hit. It doesn't matter. They're superb. They did superb work in their life, and they were just, the amount of joy I've got from that lot is just insane. So they have my permission to do it. They can call me whatever they want. Even they can do. I don't care. I love them anyway. I'll just love them.
What kind of bands or artists nowadays do you take interest in?
I don't have anything I like. There's a few R&B things that come out that are pretty interesting, but for the most part, not really. I find I just don't like I don't like the approach, because when the bands in the 70s, they invented it all. They invented rock stars, even they invented capes and dry ice and lights and lasers and all. They genuinely felt that way. They felt like they were the greatest things ever. And everything, even my generation, we kind of copied them. So there's not really a lot of authentic stuff now. And ever since X Factor and all that stuff come down, and you don't really, it's kind of like people, they'll say, well, are you talented? And they'll sing like some line like, oh, and the crowd will go, oh. It's like, I want to hear somebody bleed for, I want to hear somebody tell me their story about, you get people like Morrissey who has like a really interesting perspective on life, but that's authentically, you can hear who he is, or you hear like, any other bands like Coldplay have a perspective, U2 had a perspective, there's like bands that they're saying something truthful about who they are. You can hear who they are. But most times now, and I understand it's been, the corporations have taken over the music industry, and so it's all right. It doesn't mean I have to stop doing music, but am I going to be on the front cover of Time magazine? No, definitely not.
So for Francis Dunnery, who is about to turn 62, what is it that excites you nowadays?
I like teaching people. I don't think I've got another album in me for a while. I did a few albums. I did a blues album a couple of years ago. That was great. Tombstone Dunnery. I loved that. That's a good story. When I did, I had this a long time ago. I had this jacket. I used to wear this big black hat in California when I was about 26, and I had a big black jacket. And my manager at the time, it was AC/DC's manager, Steve. God, I can't remember his name. Steve Barnett, and he said, you look like you're from Tombstone or something like that. And he said, and he went, Tombstone Dunnery, that's the best blues name I've ever heard in my life. And so the band at the time, the Welcome to the Wild Country guys, used to joke around me and call me Tombstone all the time. Like, hey, Tombstone, where's old Tombstone at? They're always having a laugh at me like that. So when I got to do my blues album, there was only one name going on that album, Tombstone Dunnery. I love it. And that lets people know that my blues stuff is different than my pop stuff, and different from the 8-bite stuff.
And tell us a bit about the teaching.
Well, I teach I teach, I'm like a life coach for a lot of people. I have a lot of clients. I do, I got into it. I suppose psychology, the last 35 years, I've been into that. I've done massive amounts of courses. I've got like psychology degrees and stuff like that. I mean, nobody really knows this, but, I have a whole thing going on behind, other than music. And so when I do, I'm about to put up a course on Udemy, an astrological course to teach. Astrology is like a lens. It's just a different name for something. So it isn't like you can't really disagree with it. Like, so and we don't believe in astrology. We just study it. You see, we put it to the test to see if it works. It's kind of like that. But it's just a very interesting thing. And I got into it trying to prove my friend wrong, who was an astrologer. Because I'm more I'm more like in the Neil deGrasse Tyson. I like Sam Harris, and you know what I mean. Like so astrology was rough for me. But my friend bought me this book. It was by this Jungian psychologist, a girl called Dr. Liz Green, and she was from Zurich. And it was called Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. And it was about the planet Saturn and what it means, because it talks about your shadow, the shadow side of the personality, which outside of astrology, there's a shadow side of the personality. This is Freud and Jung, right? So they married that to Saturn. And so when I started to read it and I looked at the descriptions of me, and I had to kind of apologize to my friend because I'd ridiculed him that much for such a long time. I actually apologized to him. I couldn't believe, because it wasn't like, you will meet, like the tea leaf thing and all, that. This is like going to a Jungian lecture. That's what it's Jungian psychology. That's what it is. They like in the same way I told you about the crucifixion of the crown of thorns. The symbol of that is the midlife crisis, the death of the acquired personality. That's how they look at astrology. They look at all the myths in the world, and they look at the myths of things, and they find the meaning to it. And it's just, I mean, I don't want to go on about it on here, but that's what I love to do. It's fascinating. It's utterly fascinating, especially when, it just, you can't really deny it. It's weird. It's just, and I even find myself weird saying that, but it's true. So I'm putting an astrological course up on a thing called Udemy, which is like a college course. Now, so I like to do that. I like technology. I'm a Linux boy. I like to program Linux. I do that whole thing. I'm trying to buy a farm. I want to do we have a thing called the Life Farm. If you can actually look at it, thelifefarm.com. We've got our modules up there. We haven't actually got it into place yet, but you can see what we're gonna be doing and how we're going to be going about it. And so that's why I'm in Connecticut now. We're looking for the farm to get people back to nature, to get kids off their cell phones. Mm-hmm. Like that whole thing. Gerry, I could tell you a million things I'm doing. You don't want to know.
And I know, and we're getting to the end of this conversation as well. And just, getting back onto the Celtic thing, you mentioned about how, when your dad decides that you're a Celtic supporter, that's it. I know exactly what you mean by that, because I'm a living example of that too. How important is it for you to pass that on to your kids? And do you think that when you're long gone, they'll do the same?
Absolutely. There'll come a day. I mean, they watch it now. We watch it we watch it every week now. But there'll come a day, like they might drift away from it when they go to college and stuff like that. But there'll come a day. It might be when I'm sick or when I'm going to die, when I'm maybe 84 or something like that, and that will be there for them. And I'll go, oh, I remember Dad used to buy us this. Dad took us to them. Oh, I remember Dad with Jimmy Johnson and Dad. These legends and installed. It's like a download thing. You install them and you install it into your kids. And my kids have that. They'll never shake it. They won't be able to shake it. And I'll mark my words, because when I die, there'll be a Celtic flag somewhere on there at my funeral. There'll be something going on with Celtic, and because it was such a big part of my life. And they'll end up there, and even their kids, they'll pass it on to. I just know it. You can't not, you know.
Well, I wonder how many trophies Celtic will have won when that time comes. We might be up at 130, 140, something like that.
Oh, I hope so.
But it's a nice segue into the song that I know you're going to perform for us. It's called Through My Father's Eyes, and you mentioned Celtic in it. So, you know, what is that song about?
It's just all the things, like when I think of my dad, all the things that come up, like the nuns that taught me school, Sister Michael and Sister Raphael, Mother Scholastica. We had Father Kernan, old Father Kernan. I remember these are all like legends. And then we had like, like the Celtic and Rangers games, and just that whole thing that goes along, I suppose it's like a Catholic upbringing. I think that's probably, because I know Celtic are traditionally Catholic. They're not only Catholic, obviously, but they're traditionally, the Irish Catholic thing, that upbringing is shared amongst the Celtic fans. I mean, I can see on your face that you have that.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'll tell you a good quick story I'll tell you before I finish off that. So my friend John Smith, right, John Gilmore Smith, he's a massive Rangers fan, massive, right? And I love old John, he's great. And we were back and forth all the time, right? So sometimes I go to Ibrox and sometimes he comes to Celtic Park, right? So I'm sitting in Ibrox and I'm with him and I'm surrounded by 50,000 Rangers fans. And I'm sitting there, and obviously my name's Francis, right? And I'm sitting there and they're playing like Motherwell or something like that. And and Motherwell scored or something, right? And I looked at, I just looked at him because I can't do anything. I can't go. I can't do that. I'll get thrown out there in 2 minutes. And he said, "Hey, if you don't shut up, I'll tell them what your name is." Because as soon as my name comes out, that's it. There's no Rangers fans called Francis, I don't think. Anyway, going back to that. What was I saying? Sorry, Gerry.
No, we were just talking about the song Through My Father's Eyes. So because you do talk about a lot of the childhood. So is it just you basically thinking about all those things back then when you were growing up and your dad was influencing you?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So that's what the song's about. It's just that, it's an emotional statement about that. It's probably the most depressing song you could have picked for me to sing, to be honest. I would like to sing things like joy, 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 joy. And it's all like, but there is a great line in there. The Celtic fans are like, Celtic just beat Rangers 3-2. That's in there.
Well, that's why I picked that one. But Francis, feel free to record anything that you want, because whatever you put on there, I'll put out. So don't you worry about it. If you want to play an upbeat one as well, then
I'll do that one. I'll definitely do that one, because I think it's relevant, isn't it? Yeah, I can't I can't. This is the highlight of my life being on this podcast. I love it. I'm going to tell all my friends when I get off.
Unbelievable. Well, they'll be able to see it on YouTube soon. Just finally, Francis, how can people get in touch with you, or where do you want people to go to keep up with what you're doing?
Well, I can just go to francisdunnery.com. You can do that, or go to my Facebook. I'm on there. You can join up for that. I mean, I'm not very good at promoting myself. I have to force myself to do it, so it's sometimes hard to find me. But I do try. I wake up sometimes and go, right, I'm going to do this today, and I do this. But I don't have like any likes or anything. I don't think. I mean, I've got about 20,000 followers. I think somebody told me. I don't even know how many that is. I don't even know. But I can't. I don't think I can have any more. I'm not sure. Or 5,000 on one of them. I don't know. I don't understand all that. Whatever that is, that Facebook thing. I don't get it. But yeah, they can go inside my newsletter, which I put out like once every 7 years, because I can't remember to do that. And I'm around. If they go on the internet, they can find me somewhere. I'm not that old.
And what about the music? You mentioned, re-recording a lot of the stuff from
go to Bandcamp, bandcamp.com. Yeah, go and buy stuff on Bandcamp, and I'll get some new underpants.
You're right, Francis. You're terrible at promoting yourself. I had to give you a plug there to get you to say it.
I know. Yeah. So Bandcamp, that would be good. Go to Bandcamp, buy loads of stuff, and then if I sell enough downloads and all that, then I'll be able to get Ralph Lauren underpants and not just the cheap ones that I normally wear.
Can I tell you something before we finish off? You know how when you meet people for the first time, whether it's a your girlfriend or a friend or whoever, there's always a couple of things that you say or you test them to see how much you've got in common. Right? I remember Quentin Tarantino once said that if ever a new girlfriend I show her Rio Bravo, and if she doesn't like it, then that's it, it's finished. Yeah. So
Is that what he said?
yeah, that's what he said. So this is without a word of a lie. The way I test someone's musical taste and whether we're going to get on is I play them Gully Flats Boys, your album, and if they don't like it,
wow.
if they don't like it, then I know that it probably we're not going to be friends. If they do like it, then I know we're probably going to have a lot more in common. That's how big an album that's been in my life, Francis. So personally, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Gerry. That means so much to you. That's great. I love that. I'm going to tell all my friends that as well. That's fantastic. Hey,
Brilliant.
listen, when I come up to Glasgow, whenever I come up next, I'll take you out for dinner. I know some good restaurants in there, but I want to come to Celtic Park. If my kids come, I want to give you a shout because you can book them tours, can't you? You can get like a tour and all that.
You can indeed, Francis. Just you give me a shout when you're next in Glasgow on your own or with your kids, and we'll catch up. We've got lots to.
I'll bring Riley with me. Maybe Riley will go. We'll have a good laugh.
Do you know me and Paul Riley? We played at Wembley together.
With Riley, did you? So you know Riley, right?
Yeah. Well, I know him back in I think it was 2008. We both played in like it was a inverted commas celebrity Scotland v England match at Wembley, and we were both in the Scotland team. So I spent a weekend in London with Paul Riley. He is without a doubt one of the most naturally funny men I have ever met in my life.
He's a nice guy, old Roy. We love old Riley. He's an Aries. He's very aggressive. He's good. We love old Riley. We love him. He sometimes calls me when he's had another girlfriend. He's like, here. He's like, have a look at her chart. What's this one's like? He's always doing that. But I think he's with the same girl now for a long time. But and he was doing some theatre stuff. I love him. I love old Paul. He's great guy.
All right. Well, listen, Francis, it'll be great to catch up with you in person the next time you're in Glasgow. Keep in touch. Been great to talk to you about Celtic as well. To any Celtic fans watching this, go online, go to Bandcamp, find Francis Dunnery. If you haven't already, you will not be disappointed. Francis is going to perform for us now, dedicated to all the Celtic supporters. Francis, yeah?
Absolutely, and to their fathers, more importantly, to the person who brainwashed them with Celtic. That's who it's dedicated to.
Brilliant. All the best, Francis. Lovely to talk to you.
God bless you, Gerry. Thank you, brother. Great to see you.
Celtic just beat Rangers 3-2. Hallelujah, hallelujah, it's time. Thought I'd lost all them green and white Oh, Father Connor, won't you take my sins away through the wire that sits between us to the light that you give me? You took my soul away and washed it in your word. And even though your lifetime's away, I still hear you calling me now. And the church bells chime, singing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. It's time. Take a look at them Catholic boys hanging out at school. St. Bridget's just beat book well 3-2. Hallelujah, hallelujah, it's time. Thought I'd lost all them green and white stripes from my life. Through my father's eyes, home, 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 boy. Here and a long way, here and a long way from home, and that sweet melody tattooed deep in his side. Over the frankincense bridge to the great open fields where he spoke of his life in capital signs. Won't you come home, boy? The sweet melody said, I don't know what took you so long. It's been one hell of a life, but now I'm alone.